Hi, and good afternoon. Welcome to our live streaming event for the Webequay Supply Road Project. I'm Don Parkinson, Consultation Lead for the Webequay Supply Road Project, and here with me today is Marion Tibor McMahon, Socioeconomics Lead with S&C Lavalin for the Webequay Supply Road Environmental Assessment. You may recognize Marion as my co-host on the previous live streaming sessions. So typically, we would be visiting communities to consult and engage with them on the project. However, due to COVID 19, we're adapting to our new normal and we'll be hosting a series of these live streaming sessions, as some of you may know, weekly, every Wednesday at 1 to 2 p.m. and 4 to 5 p.m., focusing on different topics and areas of the environmental assessment for the project. Please engage with us after the session through your questions and send us your questions. You can do so by text at 807 630 1864 or by email at kathy.banning@supplyroad.ca. That's CATHY.BANNING at supplyroad.ca. Marion is here today to talk about a key part of the environmental assessment, socioeconomic impact analysis and gender-based analysis plus. Thanks for joining us today, Marion. Let's start with the socioeconomic side of things. So, what exactly is meant by socioeconomics as it applies to a remote Indigenous community such as Webequay?
Well, first off, just wanted to say thank you for having me here today to talk about socioeconomics as part of the Webplay Supply Road. It's good to have a different role other than being a co-host, so this is good. Well, socioeconomics as it relates to Webequay, it's how the social conditions of Webequay First Nation and the economic conditions of Webequay First Nation interact with each other. And so in this case, we'll be looking at how the social and economic conditions will be interacting with the Webequay supply road. So we'll be looking at Webequay's social conditions such as location, culture, education, income, occupation, and how that interacts with Webequay's economic conditions with their labor force and their labor activity and what's happening in the economy right now, and how all of that combined will be interacting with the supply road.
Oh, thanks for that, Marion. So, why is socioeconomics studied as part of an environmental assessment?
So, in the same way that biologists look at the environment, the physical, the biophysical, we will be looking at the human environment. So, we need to study socioeconomics to look at both the positive and the negative effects of the supply road and how that will interact with the socioeconomic factors. Um, we need to study socioeconomics as part of that EA, and we'll be looking at things like demographics, population size, education, labor force, social services, community infrastructure, and community well-being, and how all of that may change as a result of the supply roads. So I'll give an example later on, but a positive impact would be employment and training opportunities as a result of the road during construction and operations.
So, I understand that in an environmental assessment, criteria and indicators need to be identified. Why is this, and how are they used?
Yes, so they will need to be identified, and the reason why is because criteria are components of the environment that have value. Okay, so that could be things like social, economic, or cultural, and the indicators are the measurement methods to understand the change of a particular criteria. And in fact, John, in our proposed terms of reference, which is essentially the work plan for the environmental assessment, we have a preliminary list of criteria and indicators, and that's currently out for review. So we want to ensure that community members are reviewing that work plan and ensuring that we have a good list of criteria and indicators. And also on the federal process, as with the tailored impact statement guidelines, we have a list of criteria and indicators there as well from the federal process that we would also need to take a look at.
So, what are some of the socioeconomic criteria and indicators that will be used as part of the project?
So, as an example, let's look at traditional land use and resource use, such as fishing, hunting, trapping. So traditional land and resource use is the criteria. We know that Webequay has value in that. They go out on the land doing their traditional activities. So our indicators to measure the change would include things like disruption or loss of areas to do traditional land activities, number of fish spawning areas affected, the number of seasonal hunting areas affected, the number of moose mating areas affected, or even just the area for plant gathering. Like that could be lost, I guess, during construction or with the road in place, or the number of trap lines affected as well. Another example would be commercial activities and labor markets. We know that that is of value as well, and indicators to determine that change could be like effects to business activities and local employment. We know that there would be an increase there during construction, or training opportunities available for community members.
Okay. Does your socioeconomics work include collecting, receiving, or recording Indigenous knowledge from community members?
Absolutely, yes. And we value the input from community members and any Indigenous knowledge that they can provide us, because that will help us in the impact assessment, so that way we know the areas to protect, right? So typically this could be done in a variety of ways, such as indicating their areas of traditional land use on maps, just telling us where they go, so that way we know the areas to avoid. We can also do this by, listening to the stories from elders and community members to give us the history of the land, and it gives us the historical and context. And this is very important because we won't be able to get that information through desktop research. We want to have that information firsthand and make sure that the history and the culture and everything is captured and included.
So, Marion, where do you get the information that you need to do the socioeconomic assessment?
Oh, all sorts of ways. So first, what we do is we conduct a background research on the community. And we'll collect this by going through government websites such as Statistics Canada and using their census data, Indigenous Services Canada, even the First Nation community websites that they have, any economic development plans that may be published, or whatnot, any publicly available information sources. And then the fun way of collecting more information is by engaging with community members. So there's an opportunity there for community members to participate. And community members can do this by completing a social survey, which we could do either online or, going to households, participating in a focus group. We need to target different groups of people, like women, youth, elders, land users, or participate in a key informant interview. So we'd be talking to chief and council or anyone on the band administration to get information on things like social services, community infrastructure, housing, education and training programs that are in place at the community, or any economic development plans that they have going on.
Okay, tell me a bit more about these surveys. They sound pretty interesting, actually. What kind of information are you looking to collect through doing the surveys?
Well, since socioeconomics is a very broad term and we need a lot of information, so we'll be looking at things like demographics, so like age and gender, education levels, the area of studies that they've completed, things on labor force, are they employed or not employed, the area or sector of work that they're in, community infrastructure that's available in the community, community social services, housing conditions, any cultural community activities that they partake in as well. It's important to the community. And of course, community well-being, to get a sense of their health of the community members and if there are any social issues that they are experiencing. So we need a lot of information.
Okay, here's another one for you. Why is it important for community members to participate in the surveys?
Well, we need to understand all aspects of WebEquay, and so we need community members to participate. I don't know much about WebEquay other than our visits and meeting with community members, but we need to drill down and get that firsthand information from community members. We can only do so much with research, and we also want community members of all perspectives. To give us an idea of what the current conditions are right now in Webequay, so that way we can understand the changes of the supply road both positively and negatively, and also socially and economically, because this is a very unique project. Webequay First Nations are remote communities, so the socioeconomic impacts are going to be unique as well.
Okay, you knew this question was coming. How will you be conducting the surveys?
Well, we are proposing a number of ways to conduct the surveys. So, one way that could be easy and convenient would be doing it online. So, we would be doing it through a software called SurveyMonkey and having that on our website, which you should visit, by the way, supplyworld.ca. If you are not computer savvy at all or don't like using technology, that is fine too, because we would be doing door to door. So we would have community coordinators visiting households to help community members complete the survey. We're also thinking of doing like a drop-in session for community members to just come and meet with our community coordinators and answer the survey that way. Or we can also be available virtually, at the gym or something, and do the survey with communities and the community coordinators, and do it with them there. So whatever is easy for community members and however they feel comfortable completing the survey is fine by us. Like, we know we're asking for a lot of information, so we want them to feel comfortable as well in any of these methods.
So, will the surveys be difficult to complete? And how long will they take to complete? Will there be instructions on how to complete the surveys properly? So many questions.
So many questions. So, no, the survey will not be difficult to complete. A lot of work goes into these surveys, a lot of review as well with WebEquay as a project management team and chief and council, because we want to ensure that the language is appropriate and we're asking the right questions to capture and characterize WebEquay's socioeconomic conditions and everything. So the survey shouldn't take more than half an hour, hopefully, but we know that there are a lot of questions there. And we will be providing instructions and a guide, so that way community members and the coordinators as well, who will be administering the surveys, will have an understanding as to why we're asking the questions that we're asking and why we're trying to get data on the socioeconomic factors and the criteria, essentially.
So, when you're doing these surveys, are you targeting specific groups or types of people with the surveys?
Yes, we will. So we will be applying what is called the Gender-Based Analysis Plus, which is a framework that requires us to target diverse groups of the community. So that includes women, youth, elders, land users, men. And we'll be planning focus group sessions, either with, in community and us participating virtually, to capture those voices.
Wow, sounds like we need to talk about gender-based analysis plus.
Mm-hmm.
How about telling all the folks out there in streaming land about what we call GBA plus in the business?
So, Gender-Based Analysis Plus, as I mentioned, is a framework to assess how diverse groups of women, men, and gender diverse people experience things like programs or initiatives, and for instance, in our case, the supply road, and how they'll be experiencing impacts from their perspectives. So this is actually a new requirement as part of the federal impact assessment process. And we will be applying what they call the GBA plus lens as we assess the socioeconomic impact assessment, because um, people with different identity factors can experience things differently. So how I may experience the supply road if I were a community member could be different from how you would experience the supply road and the impacts if you were a community member too.
So why is gender-based analysis plus important?
It's important because, as I said before, we have to capture the diverse voices and perspectives of the different and diverse groups of Webquay. So, as I said, people can experience things differently based on their identity factors. So, what are they? They're basically, that includes your gender, your age, your race, even your mental and physical ability or disability, and how that interaction between your identity factors that can influence how you may experience something like the impacts of the supply road. So, for instance, one may argue that young females could be experiencing things differently than young males, and that young females would be experiencing some impacts more than young males.
Here's another question for you that I think community members will want to know the answer to, because they keep hearing the phrase community well-being. Does community well-being have anything to do with socioeconomics?
Yes, it does. It's actually a combination of the social, economic, cultural, and environmental conditions that are essential for communities, so for Webquay, to thrive and flourish and achieve their community goals and aspirations, essentially. So when we look at a community, we find that these attributes play a role in a community's well-being. And what is their well-being? So it's based on their connectedness. So their sense of belonging, their culture, their social support, also their livability. So, what are their housing conditions like? Do they have access to transportation, their education, infrastructure, community social services, even safety and culture? And then we also look at equity. So, is the community being treated fairly, and are their community needs being met? So, Webquay is a remote community. So, how is all of that being impacted, their community well-being, as a result of the supply road? So, it's very important for the EA.
Okay, here's my final question. I'm sure there's lots of questions out there in streaming land. What kinds of impacts will you be looking at as part of the socioeconomic impact analysis?
So, like as I said earlier, we'll be looking at both the positive impacts and the negative impacts. So, examples of positive impacts, and we would call these really benefits. These would be the benefits for the community. So these could be, employment and economic benefits to community members and businesses, during construction operations, because they can partake in things like heavy equipment operation, environmental monitoring, provide catering services during construction, even accommodations or camp operations. There would also be an emergence of economic opportunities along the road, such as gas stations or restaurants. There would be opportunities for capacity building and business training, opportunities for youth, also opportunities for higher education levels. There would be better access to training and education. So things like that. In terms of negative effects, this could be, and we hear this a lot actually when we talk to communities, are outsiders coming in. For sure, that would pose a safety issue, or even it would put strain on the land for resource users in the community. These outsiders coming in on their traditional territory and hunting, the wildlife there that community members are hunting. So, other negative impacts would be loss or disruption to current traditional land and resources, as I mentioned. Even like outsiders possibly using cultural sites, maybe, or possibly with there could be social issues, during the construction of the road. There might be some safety concerns there. And going back to my comment with young females, that could be a concern for young women in the community, right? So those will be things that we will be looking at in the socioeconomic impact assessment.
Wow, lots of information. Lots of information there. It's going to take me a couple minutes to digest all of that, I think. Thanks for that, Marion. I think we're going to actually show you three drone videos. But before we do that, I'm just going to remind everyone, send your questions to 807-630, or your text your questions to 807-630-1864, or by email at kathy.banning@supplyroad.ca. That's cathy.banning@supplyroad.ca. So we welcome your questions. We want to get questions from you. And so for now, let's have a look at some drone videos. Everyone loves drone videos. So we're going to give you drone videos. So here they come.
One of the purposes of the EA, or the environmental assessment, is to look at natural spots like this, filled with beauty and used by the community, and to come up with concrete solutions as to how we can protect it. The community weighs in, scientists weigh in, and other communities can give their comments, and from all this information, a plan is made that will guide the construction of any roads, bridges, etc. to cause the least damage.
How long is the flight again? An hour?
A little over an hour and a half.
Okay.
Once we get airborne. It's gonna be a bit of a long taxi this morning. We gotta go to the other side of the lake before we take off.
Looks like you got the business class
So we're conducting a variety of wildlife surveys for the project. We make sure that we do a balance of surveys for mammals and for birds, and with a specific focus on species at risk, species whose populations are in decline, that we know are in decline. And the importance of the surveys is to determine the diversity of wildlife that we have out here, the proportions of different species that exist in the land, where and how many species we know are important resources for the area, and to make sure that we're aware of where the species that are in decline are occurring and whether they would be impacted by the project. Gathering data on the wildlife that's important to the community, whether it be game birds or large mammals such as moose or caribou, or fish, means that the mitigations that are put in place while the project is undertaken can minimize impacts to those species, and that we can make developers aware of where those resources are occurring, and that we can work with the community to come up with solutions to minimize impacts.
Hi, welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed those drone videos. They're always great to watch, and some of the scenery from Webequay was just breathtaking. We actually got a question while we were off showing the videos. So I got another question here for you, Marion. Hello, will the videos be translated in our language to engage folks who are not comfortable in English?
Absolutely, these videos will be translated. And in fact, all of the material that you will see on the website supplyroad.ca, so materials like our newsletters, our fact sheets, and our podcasts that we have there, short videos with Webequay community members and subject matter experts, will all be translated into the native language. But do bear with us because it does take time for translators to get through all that material and translate it. But they will be translated, so keep checking our website for translated materials and communication products.
Well, the questions keep coming in, Marion. And here's another one. When will you be collecting the information?
Good question. So before we will be collecting the information, a lot of things have to happen. So like developing our survey, which we are constantly doing and reviewing with Webequay's project management team and chief and council. So that needs to be reviewed by them and approved to make sure everything is good. And development of our focus group questions as well, or key informant interviews. So that needs to happen first, but we anticipate collecting the information between January and May of next year. So it gives us some time to engage with community members and for them to provide us their input and participate in our socioeconomic engagement activities.
We've got another question. You ready for another question?
I'm ready.
Okay, here it comes. Can other Indigenous communities participate?
Oh, yes. So we will be making the survey available online. So again, we will notify communities to complete that survey online. And what I would encourage communities to do as well is to engage with the project team. And if they want to participate in our socioeconomic engagement activities, we can work with them to see what it is that they would like to do. You know, if they want us to do focus groups or do those, door-to-door surveys and whatnot in whatever method that is good for the community, right? And based on the community's protocols. So definitely communities, if other Indigenous communities are interested, reach out to the project team and let us know.
The questions keep rolling in. We've got another one here. The fourth question.
Okay.
Will the survey be translated?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I understand, they may not be comfortable doing a survey in English, and there is a lot of information there, or community members just may not be able to speak English. So absolutely, the survey will be translated so that way community members can answer the survey. And of course, we'll also have community coordinators in the community who will be able to do that in their language.
Looks like we got another question here. They just keep rolling in, these questions. It's amazing. Will the information gathered through the survey be kept confidential? Great question.
Oh, that is a good question. Yes, everything will be kept confidential, and we're not asking for any personal information, not at all. We'll be asking them, what community they are a member of, but that is it. And everything is just going to be kept anonymous. So we have that disclaimer as well built into the survey, so that way everyone knows. But this information is collected specifically for the Webequay Supply Road Environmental Assessment. This survey and answers given to us will not be shared beyond our project team or beyond the environmental assessment. So this will be kept confidential.
Well, it looks like that is all the questions. I think you've answered. Enough questions. So I'd just like to thank everyone for tuning in today. This isn't the end of the engagement process. As I mentioned before, we'll be doing these live streaming events weekly, every Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m. and 4 to 5 p.m. focusing on different topics and areas of the environmental assessment. For more information, please visit our website, which is supplyroad.ca, where there's a wealth of information on the project there, from videos with WebEquate community members and subject matter experts, fact sheets, and newsletters. You can also subscribe to our newsletters and receive project updates as the project progresses. Don't forget to follow our Facebook page, Supply Road, where you can get updates on future live streaming events and information. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Please stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you back here next week to talk about the environmental assessment terms of reference and watch again some great drone videos. Thanks for watching.